Good morning and welcome back, everyone, to another episode of More to Explore. And we've got a packed show for today. So, hello from wherever you are joining us. We're hanging out with the bats today, and we'll learn more about the great work from our partners at the Lubee Bat Conservancy today. Then we'll take a look at the incredibly adorable cheetah cubs. And of course, we are in full swing with Egg Watch with the osprey has started laying their eggs. And stick with us until the end, where you'll get a sneak peek at a new website feature on explore.org and how you can help us make it even better. So let's get to it. My name is Brian Bird, and joining me is explore.org's resident naturalist, Mike Fitz. Mike, good afternoon.
Hey, good afternoon, Brian, and thanks to everybody watching around the world. If you're new to explore.org, welcome to the community. And of course, welcome back to all of our longtime viewers. We're the world's largest live nature cam network with about 190 live cameras around the world. If you have comments or questions for us, please drop those in the chats. We'll be looking for them during the broadcast today. Brian and I are live. We have some recorded segments to look at, but we'll be looking for comments and questions throughout the broadcast. And we see that there are several people excited about the bats that we're going to talk about today. So I think that's great because right now we're looking at the Lubee mixed species flying fox cam on explore.org. Humans, we've I think unfairly shrouded bats in myth, which has led us to malign them and persecute them as a group of animals. There's maybe no other order of mammals as a if we think of bats as like a taxonomic group of organisms that are as persecuted as bats are. But the true nature of bats reveals they are social, curious, playful, and intelligent animals who serve vital roles in the ecosystems that we share with them. And to help us learn more about bats, I spoke with Brian Pope, the director of the Lubee Bat Conservancy in Florida, and Paige Kidwell, who is Lubee's social media coordinator and works on their animal care team. Lubee Bat Conservancy is a nonprofit dedicated to saving bats and their habitats through conservation, education, and awareness, with a focus on children and community engagement. So here is our conversation. Brian, great to see you today.
How you doing? I appreciate you guys having us on.
And also I'm joined by Paige Kidwell, who is Lubee's social media coordinator and also works on their animal care team. So Paige, great to see you.
Hello, thanks for having us today.
And Lubee Bat Conservancy is a nonprofit dedicated to saving bats and their habitats through conservation, education, and awareness, with a focus on children and community engagement. And I've learned an awful lot about bats through their work. So I'm excited to speak with both of you today and learn just a little bit more about what you do, what individual bats can tell us. Because bats, they're not pets, right? You do care for individual animals at your center. You have an important reason, though, for keeping them in captivity. So how are you using captive bats to ensure the conservation of wild bats?
Well, one of the reasons we have is really to showcase these animals. When we were founded in 1989, there really wasn't a lot known about bats, especially in this type of a setting, looking at their biology, physiology, and even behavior. So when we were founded, God, almost 36 years ago, even though there was a lot of other animals here, we really narrowed our focus after a couple years to just overall fruit bats, even though we have some native bats now that have had some injuries they can't be released to the wild. So one was really to study them and what can we learn about these animals and translate that into saving their wild counterparts. So a lot of the bats that are at Lubee right now were either born at Lubee or they were brought in from other institutions. Some of these bats weren't in great conditions, and I should say we are not a sanctuary. We are an accredited member of the Association of Zoos and Aquariums. So Disney's Animal Kingdom is also accredited, Pittsburgh Zoo, Columbus, San Diego. So some of the biggest names out there, Lubee is also accredited. But if we do find animals that are not in ideal situations, we will bring them in to the center. So really it's to learn about them, to provide homes. We do have breeding programs for certain species where we know the genetics, where we can put, whichever male has great genes with a harem of females, because they do have harems in the wild, so that we can maintain that high genetic diversity. But really one of the other things too is we have quite a few followers on social media combined and Explore, over 2.7 million people, and to be able to showcase those bats to people around the world and really change a lot of those negative misconceptions is one of the most important aspects to our organization.
And providing for the well-being of captive animals must begin with an understanding of an animal's life in the wild. So how might you use your knowledge of wild individuals to help your bats stay healthy?
Really, a lot of it comes down to diet and nutrition. What are they eating in the wild? And if they do come into a setting like Lubee, how can we translate their diet here to what they would be eating in the wild? And I'll say with one of our species here called the Rodrigues fruit bats, although their numbers are doing great in the wild right now. At one point in the late 70s, there was only about 70 to 80 of them left in the wild. And a lot of conservation efforts have been going on that island as well, which I should say is in the Mascarenes where the dodo was found. The island of Rodrigues is east of Madagascar. But another natural disaster could come through because they do get hit with cyclones. And let's find out about these animals in the wild and also in the setting, because what we have is each one of these animals, and we have, I believe 17, Lubee Page would know more than I do, but I believe we have 17 here. That if those animals ever needed to be put back into the wild, if some kind of natural disaster happened, just because they're only found on one island, if their numbers were to plummet, then they've been taking very good records and details of not only the individuals but their genetics as well. And we have bats at Lubee that maybe one day could help to repopulate the island if it was ever needed. So the more that we can find out about the bats, not only in the wild and their behaviors, but translate that into a captive setting here, that we may be able to help establish populations down the road. And I will say, I actually have a phone call this Wednesday morning with a couple of folks around the world, and it is regarding the Christmas Island flying fox. So Christmas Island is found northwest of Australia in the Indian Ocean, and there is a species of bat there called the Christmas Island pipistrelle that went extinct due to a lot of introduced and invasive animals, but also because of inaction by the local government. So there is a bat there called the Christmas Island flying fox, and what we're going to be talking about, and then there are going to be other discussions happening in August, is, are their numbers plummeting so far that we need to step in and bring some of these individuals in the wild? Are they even a separate species? Excuse me, are they a subspecies? What do we need to know about them in the wild? And does a place like Lubee, or at least our knowledge of old world fruit bats, can we translate that to another institution, whether it be in Australia or Christmas Island, to bring some of these animals in? So I kind of correlate the Rodrigues fruit bats that we have here at Lubee. Why are they here? This is a prime example of something was ever to happen to the population of the wild. We have the genetics not only here, but at many accredited institutions around the world, that we could put those in the wild, maybe one day introduce them back into the wild. But we're also doing the same thing. At least we have a phone call regarding that bat, that Christmas Island flying fox, this Wednesday morning, and then there's going to be more discussions about other species coming up in August.
Sounds like it's a never-ending process to learn more about the bats and be able to care for them properly and protecting their habitats in the wild, of course. At your center, though, at Lubee, Paige, what techniques are you using to ensure that bats, get the enrichment that they need to be mentally and physically healthy? I think that surprises a lot of people that bats are complicated critters, with a pretty rich social life from what I've read. So how are you caring for that?
Absolutely. That's one of my favorite questions. And before I started at Lubee, that was my favorite thing I learned at Lubee, that I wanted to really work at Lubee, because they have a whole enrichment calendar. So it's not just, okay, here's some toys, go have fun. It's not really that. We have a whole calendar. We have categories for enrichment. Like you were saying, they're so intelligent, so social. And so we want to make sure that they're doing all of these behaviors that they, in the wild, they would be looking for food. They would be avoiding predators. And here at Lubee, we give them their food. They don't really have to avoid predators here. So making sure that they have those opportunities is really important. And like I was saying, here at Lubee, they take it a step further. We've got a whole calendar. So every day of the month, we're looking at, are we switching categories? Is today they're getting a unique food item? Maybe tomorrow it'll be a new scent. And so, yeah, it's every day of the month they're getting something different. And beyond that, not just something different, but something that's targeting something different. Maybe we want them to socialize more within their habitat. Maybe we want them to explore other parts of their habitat. So yeah, it's really cool that we don't just do, oh, here's some fun toys, go at it. We do put a lot of thought into what things would they be doing in the wild, and how can we encourage that here at Lubee.
And then you're also really active on social media. You have a lot of followers. Brian was mentioning something like 2.7 million of them or something like that. So Paige, how does sharing the stories of individual bats at Lubee help people overcome their fear and misconceptions about bats?
Yeah, like Brian mentioned, even still today, but for a long time, very little was known about bats. And so it's very easy to take something that not just the general public, but even scientists knew very little about, and to use it in movies and in TV to be a good villain, something people don't know about. So let's make it creepy and scary. And so social media has been great in sort of taking that idea that many of us have, myself at least, have been raised around, and sort of shifting that into, hey, here's the reality. Here's what we see. Here's their personalities. Here's what they do every day, and here's the truths about them. And Brian mentioned earlier, we get comments all the time that say, hey, I've been really scared of bats my whole life, and seeing them snack on this watermelon or drink their juice, it really changed. Something as small as that can really change someone's view on them, which is really important to them. Having support and having people care about them is a very big step for them. So social media plays a big role in that, for sure.
I'm also curious
too, with our,
go ahead, Brian. Sorry.
Have sheds and a whole hallway dedicated to toys for the bats, which is pretty incredible. It's like a garden shed you have that you get at like a big box store or wherever. We have, I don't even know how many are out down there, 5 or 6, plus just all these walls full of stuff for the bats to play with. They like things that make noise, things that they can take apart and shake. And, it's not always even food. Some of it's sensory, auditory, olfactory. So we really, and I can say that Lubee wrote the book on fruit bat enrichment. We have written books on enriching these animals' lives, because we want them to live full and healthy lives, and the lives that they deserve. So what Paige does and the rest of the animal care staff every day with just different enrichments, it's important. And then translating it to social media, and like she just said about, I never knew they played with toys like that. I never knew that they were, that they were social and curious and intelligent. It's a great opportunity for us to showcase our bats.
What have you learned about bats from working with them as individuals? One thing that I learned just by kind of reading some of your literature and your website is that bats have needs that are similar to primates and other social animals. And I think that it could become, that comes as a surprise to a lot of people. So maybe that's something that you two have learned. It's certainly something that I have learned, but I'm curious about that. What have you learned about bats from working with individuals?
Paige, go ahead.
I guess for me, something that really surprised me when I started working here was just how much they really do all have their own personality, which, is something that if you're an animal person, maybe you're saying, well, duh. But, especially the Explore cams, they really help with that, because we see a different side to their personalities when we're not here, after sunset during the evening. And so, yeah, that really surprised me. Going back to the enrichment, we could put out the same enrichment item for all the bats, and then to be able to watch them, again, especially when they're more active around the evening time, to watch them problem solve in different ways. That was A, how smart they are surprised me, but B, just how different they can be personality wise and in how they problem solve. And so that's one of my favorite things about enrichment as well, is being able to see their different personalities come out. And that was really surprising to me. Even being a bat lover, just seeing how different all their personalities are and how intelligent they are was very cool to me.
I'll say that I'm going to agree with Paige. They all have different personalities, and you do have your favorites. Okay, you can say you're not going to get attached to these animals. You do. And each one of the species is also different. Like we have the big ones that you see in Explore, the Malayan flying foxes. They're extremely social. But we have, like Tyrant is, I know, a favorite, little golden mantle flying fox. Whereas some of these bats are real social. Some of the other ones, like Tyrant, the little golden mantles, they're just shy, and they're solitary, especially in the wild. At one point, they thought their numbers were plummeting, which they are decreasing, but not like they thought, or I should say decades ago. They just hide really well, and they're solitary. But I will say this, so I still have an opportunity to address one of the things with Explore and learning something about bats. So I had actually worked I was at Lubee for a couple years in the mid to late 90s, and actually went to Disney for a while, and then I came back to Lubee, and I love what I do. But I had only been here a couple months, and it's 96. And while Disney's Animal Kingdom was building Animal Kingdom, we went down there, and we got a tour, and everything was really cool. But we got back late, and we thought we were going to be back earlier, so we never really had a chance to feed the bats at that point. So we came back, and these bats were on the ground grazing. And I know the grazings come up and Explore with some of the pictures. They will go down to graze on the ground. And I remember looking down like, what is happening? I'm thinking, are they all sick? Is there something wrong? No, we planted ryegrass at the time, and the bats love going down and eating the grass. So they kind of looked up at us, like all of them, like you're finally here, so that we can eat. You know, that you're going to put the food out for us. But seeing the behaviors, like I would have never thought that these bats would have eaten grass, and that actually turned into a whole new enrichment for them. Let's try these different grasses and some of these little plants, make sure obviously they're not toxic. So really not only seeing individual personalities, but some of how the different species work and interact with each other, but their behaviors. I would have never thought the bats would have gone down to the grass. And I know that some people, there have been a lot of comments on Explore. People are like, that's great. Others are like, why are they on the ground? Are they hurt? They just love going down to eat that ryegrass, especially in the spring and fall months whenever we plant it.
And Brian, you also mentioned that, you know, try not to get attached, but you can't, you inevitably do get attached. So I'm wondering for both of you though, but maybe I'll throw this one back to you, Brian, first. Do you have a bat at Lubee that you're particularly fond of, or maybe bats? Maybe there's several of them.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's one named Sonny who's a little golden mantle-like tyrant, and he was born in 2009, I believe. And he had actually, we had to hand raise him. He was it was a very difficult birth for his mother. So we wound up hand raising him. And I literally went down there today to see him. So Sonny's a favorite. Calvin, or we have a huge male named Calvin who I like. There's one of a set of twins named Frick. But I will say, of all the animals I've worked in, my career has not just been bats, although they've been prominent. There was a bat named Arthur. And Arthur came to Lubee in 1990. And he was just this big, goofy looking bat with just these huge bug eyes and these snaggle teeth and a tongue that can never stay in his mouth. And he was in a pen with another bat, actually Calvin's father named King. This bat had a wingspan about 5.5 feet. And King was this dominant bat, and just, you know, he wasn't aggressive towards Arthur, but he, you know, kind of muscle mod, and with all the females that were there. So all these pups were coming out of there, and you notice they all kind of had traits like Arthur, like, hey, yeah, they kind of looked like him. Genetic testing done later on found out that Arthur sired every one of the pups that came out of there. So we had to separate him because his genetics were so well presented in the collection, but he was just such a calm bat. I love that whenever we could go in there, especially with TV crews, because they'll go right in there. He's just kind of goofy hanging out. He was always overweight, but somehow he was a ladies' man because he wound up having over 50 offspring, grandchildren. I will say this. So Arthur, we euthanized him in 2017. He had head injury, he just couldn't come back from it. So I always said if anything was to happen to Arthur, that I would want him to be permanently a part of Lubee. And long story short, he didn't have to have a necropsy. We knew what the issue was. So I worked with the University of Florida forensics team because we're here in Gainesville, Florida, and they cleaned his body up. And we have his skeleton on display for people to come see. We have a glass case over it. So not only did he do a lot, one, for the collection of these animals, too, so prolific at breeding, but a lot of people that would come in, whether for educational tours or for media, that would see this bat and they'd learn about them. We literally had 2 tours. There's one on grounds right now, and the woman giving the tour, Caroline, shows everybody the skeleton. Our whole staff does, but just this is what a skeleton looks like. And Arthur was a big bat, so to be able to see the his skeletal structure and bone morphology, and like this is what a bat's like. So not only did I absolutely enjoy being with this bat, but he's now a permanent part of Lubee, which we love having here.
That's a great story. Paige, I don't know if you can top that, but do you have any bats at Lubee right now that maybe that you're particularly fond of?
Yeah, Brian mentioned earlier there's a bat named Tyrant who we see on the Explorer cameras quite often. He's a little golden mantled flying fox. I'm very fond of him, a very small, shy troublemaker. I'm also very fond of one of our large flying foxes. His name's Boneyard, but he's very shy, very nervous. And I love that one of our most shy boys has a tough name like Boneyard. So those 2 might be my top 2, but it's hard. They're all so cool. I feel so lucky to get to work with all of them every day, but maybe those 2.
And just a couple more questions for the both of you. Brian, you actually, maybe this is something you want to talk about a little bit more, maybe not, but I'm wondering about, some of your other projects that you're doing at Lubee. You mentioned the Christmas Island bats is something that, you're looking at conservation measures for, but what are 1 or 2 projects that Lubee is working on right now on behalf of bats?
I'll go back to the Rodrigues fruit bat. And then I mentioned, I'm glad you brought this up, that Lubee's funding a project there. It's called the Rodrigues Environmental Education Project. And I'll just back it up by saying in the mid-90s, there was one woman named Mary Jane Rabudi who started a grassroots environmental campaign and efforts on the island. Radio programs, getting locals involved, working with kids, working with volunteer groups, elderly, replanting the island, trying to bring in ecotourism, and also focusing on the wildlife that's there. Because of the work that she's done, and then getting Lubee involved, Philly Zoo is a big part of that as well. She's still around, but she's passed that on to somebody else. And we fund that project every year. So to fund an educator, the island is only about 47 square miles, but to fund an educator to go and work on, reforesting, teaching kids, teaching the elderly, and getting the local community involved to plant, to bring in ecotourism and environmental, strengthen environmental laws on the island has been huge. And to see the number of bats go from 70 to 20,000 is incredible. The other one that is, we've been working in this area for a long time is called the Solomon Islands. So it is northeast of Australia, kind of southeast of Papua New Guinea. And right now, I've just got an email from my contact there, Hans here. He is son of the chief of one of the tribal lands. We are funding a community called Zaira Community. It's Zaira, and we're funding their court costs and legal fees to defeat logging companies. There's been so much logging, 800 meters and below on the Solomon Islands. It's just, and most of this timber is going to China, and there's really not a lot of sustainability at all. So they have this area, I think it's 3,700 hectares, I believe, of island, and some of the only monkey-faced bats live there. They're not really found anywhere else. A couple other species, this Vangunu giant rat that was just found, the locals knew about it, was really kind of rediscovered. So we're funding them to fight these legal battles and court costs to save their forests from these developers and logging, and we're winning. It's not over yet, but we're just funding a community. And you work with the people, save the forest, you can save the wildlife as well. So those are two which are pretty prominent, and that is something that we are going to continue funding well into the future.
Absolutely amazing. Just great work there. So yeah, thank you for that. One final question for the both of you. What do you recommend someone can do to get to know bats a little better?
Paige?
One very easy thing you could do would be to give us a follow on your favorite social media platforms. We post about them all the time. We love to share about them and facts about them, information about them, seeing different sides of them. So that's a really easy way to learn a little bit more about them, is just to give us a follow.
They can always go to our website. It's Lubee, Lubee.org. But really, even bats in their own backyard, learn what species that are there, what their certain needs are. And we always tell folks that if you want to plant night blooming flowers that will attract insects, it's going to attract bats as well, because they eat pretty much anything that flies. Or you could put up a bat house as well. And we just installed our 168th bat house the other day. We do it in Georgia all the way down to South Florida. But we have information on our website, which again, it's lubee.org, and it's specifically on general bat house information. So no matter where you're at, what should the bat house look like? We have plans, which way should it face? All these kind of like little things, little details that could make it, you want to put them in the right direction for successful occupancy. So we have information on our website as well. So learn about bats in your area, put up a bat house, put in night blooming flowers to attract insects, and like Paige said, follow Lubee on our Facebook or all of our Instagram, TikTok, and social media pages, or go to our website, lubee.org.
Well, excellent. Thanks so much to the both of you for joining me today. It's been a fun conversation. Definitely, I learned some things about bats, and I look forward to seeing your bats on explore.org and elsewhere.
I appreciate you guys having us, Mike, and again, thank you to everyone at Explore. You guys have been wonderful to work with over the past few years, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having us. We appreciate it.
Thanks again to Brian and Paige for speaking with me. I think their passion and empathy and commitment to bats stood out in that interview. You heard Brian and Paige mention a few of the projects that Lubee is working on to protect bats. So let's not forget that a major cause of habitat loss for wildlife is driven by consumption, meaning we buy stuff that harms wildlife habitat. deforestation for palm oil plantations and also logging operations, as Brian was mentioning, in the tropics that harms bats, that harms the elephants, the orangutans, the rare plants, birds, and insects that live in those places. And we can help by demanding alternatives to palm oil and avoiding buying products with palm oil in them. And seriously, read the ingredient list for food and skincare products because it's in a lot of stuff. And then also make sure that any lumber or wood products that you purchase are from sustainable sources as well. And then, yeah, go to lubee.org to learn more about their work. And if you can, make a donation to support their efforts on behalf of bats. We did get a couple of bat-related questions coming in while we were listening to the interview. So we'll get to those real quick before we move on to our next segment. Connie was wondering about the sleeping position of bats and why they sleep upside down. That's a great question. I think this might be a legacy of them evolving from arboreal mammals. Fossil evidence suggests that the ancestors of bats were something maybe like gliders that jumped from trees or high places. So maybe they weren't moving, along the ground, trotting in place and trying to sustain flapping flight in that way. They kind of took to the trees first, and then went to flight from there. But it also can, hanging upside down in a tree or a cave, it can help provide you with camouflage. So there could be some predator avoidance advantages. And then finally, we know that with modern day bats, at least, it provides, it's easier on their leg bones. Gravity and the design of bat muscles, bones, and tendons in their legs keep the claws on their feet closed when they're hanging upside down. So they don't have to expend any energy holding on while roosting. Everything is just kind of designed so it locks in place there. And perhaps there's just not one single reason. But yeah, it's an interesting question. Why do bats sleep upside down? And then Oso Negro wrote in and was wondering, how long do flying foxes live in the wild and in captivity? I think it's more than 20 years at least. Bats as a group of animals are fairly long-lived. So it's not uncommon for individuals to live 15, 20 years or more, even in the wild, even for the small species. So I think with flying foxes, they have maybe a similar lifespan. And Brian, one of my great memories for bats on Explore.org was when I got to watch a live bat birth on the Lubee cams. This was a few years ago, and it was really amazing to see, one of those unforgettable moments that we can experience through webcams. But I never thought I'd be able to witness the birth of cheetah cubs either, and we had that experience just last week.
Yeah, definitely. I wouldn't put seeing cheetah cub birth on my 2025 bingo card, but here we are. And Mike, you pulled some great clips, and here's actually the clip of the fourth cub being born. You see the other little bobbleheads. So cute.
Yeah, this is just an amazing view of the birth of this little cheetah cub. And that was the fourth and final cub in this litter. We want to thank our webcam partners at the Hood-Sprayed Endangered Species Center and also at Africam to bring us these cameras. The Hood-Sprayed Endangered Species Center breeds cheetahs for the purpose of introducing them to the wild to help the endangered population. And the cheetah cubs were born on April 30, and they belong to a cheetah who is named Tammy. And this is remarkable. It's extraordinary. It's a rare opportunity to see the growth and development of young cheetah cubs. Last week on the Wild Moments show, Ben and Kelly, who are guides in South Africa, they talked about how they had never seen cheetah cubs that are so young. Usually if they get a glimpse of any cheetah cubs in the wild, it's after they're a few weeks old. So we really have this special experience to see cubs from birth growing up into a state of independence. So when they're born, the cheetah cubs, they're about the size of a small guinea pig. Their eyes are still closed and their eyes won't open for about 10 days after they're born. And you might be able to hear them call and cry when they're next to mom or separated from mom. And through careful observation, we might be able to gain some insights on the development of the cub's senses and motor skills at this very young age. So yeah, this is just awesome to see. Looking forward to watching this family grow over the next weeks and months. And then speaking of small growing animals, Brian, moving on from mammals, our nest cams are full of activity right now.
Oh yeah, everything is in full swing. So let's get to it with Egg Watch.
Welcome to the May 5, 2025 edition of Egg Watch on Explore.org. As usual, we have many updates to share, including new nest cams. And we're going to start with some of our new nest cams right now. Great Gray Owls, we were really excited to get this cam back. We haven't had a Great Gray Owl cam in a few years. Just difficult to locate the nest, first of all. And then to get a cam in a location where you can broadcast it, that's, and again, an additional challenge. But this nest cam went live on April 22nd. It was located several days before that, and the female was already incubating on the nest at that time. Great Gray Owls incubate eggs for about 30 days, and only the female incubates. So we could be in the hatch window for eggs in that nest right now, but we don't know how many eggs are in there. And then we want to thank our partner, the Owl Research Institute, for locating this camera, and then also the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes in Montana for letting us watch that amazing species. We have a long-eared owl nest as well that went live since our last program, I think. Long-eared owls, they incubate for about 26 to 28 days. Only the female incubates, so similar to Great Gray Owls. And we could be in the hatch window now for that. So we don't know how many eggs are in the nest, but we're looking forward to the opportunity to see some little owlets in that nest this week, or maybe next week at the latest. So check that cam out. Great horned owls, they have been growing rapidly over the last couple of weeks or so. I think last time we spoke, we knew of only maybe 2 owlets in the nest, but then I was just looking at some screenshots and notes from the cam viewers, and they were able to find 3 owlets in the nest. We're going to start to see them moving around a lot more over the next couple of weeks. So they first hatched at the beginning of April, and they start to branch and leave the nest on a consistent basis, maybe around 6 weeks of age. So I think we're going to start to see them moving more and more. And again, thanks to the Owl Research Institute for partnering with us for all of these owl cams. We still have eagle news, of course, to share with the Trempealeau Eagles in Trempealeau, Wisconsin. Mr. and Mrs. T, but it's really been Mrs. T mostly on this nest over the last couple of weeks. There were 3 eaglets in this nest last time we had our More to Explore program. 2 eaglets died in the cold, however, wet weather on the 21st of April. So there's just 1 eaglet remaining in the nest right now. John Howe, Amy Reese, and I discussed the situation in the Trempealeau nest in detail during our Bald Eagle play-by-play program last Thursday, because there's a lot going on here. It just wasn't the death of those 2 eaglets in this nest. It's also that Mr. T has a second nest nearby. So there's a triad going on here between 2 females and 1 male, and that's led to some really interesting behavior to see. But this eaglet is getting really big. It has almost a consistently full crop these days, and we're looking forward to it fledging sometime in late June. And thanks to the Raptor Resource Project for partnering with us there. Moving on, though, to our other eagle nest with young in them right now, the Fraser Point nest in Santa Cruz Island, Channel Islands National Park in California. There are still 2 growing eaglets in there. They hatched in late March, and we're looking for a mid-June fledge from them. The Sauce's nest, also on Santa Cruz Island in Channel Islands National Park, still has the single eaglet there, looking big, looking great. That eaglet hatched on March 14 and early June fledge time, I think, for that bird. And thanks for our Santa Cruz cams. Thanks to our partner, the Institute for Wildlife Studies, to give us this footage. We were also, last time we talked, looking forward to another goose clutch hatching and jumping from the nest, but unfortunately that clutch failed. We don't know why, but it seems like none of the eggs in that nest hatched. And perhaps the female's infertile, perhaps there's something else going on. We don't know, but she's still incubating at this time. So that's one of those things where they just can't really shut off their incubating instincts for a long while, even though we're well beyond the hatch window for that clutch. So unfortunate for them, but hopefully we'll get another opportunity to see more goslings in the future. We also are happy to announce that we're looking forward to the possibility to see peregrine falcon chicks hatching this week. Thanks to our partners, again, at the Raptor Resource Project. With the Great Spirit Bluff Falcons in Minnesota, there's 4 eggs in there. And really right now, like today is like the beginning of our hatch watch. So the hatch window is just opening up right now. Probably by the end of the week, we'll have 1 or more peregrine falcon eye-asses in the nest. And then that's the same for the Castle Rock Falcons. That's across the Mississippi River, a bit farther north than Great Spirit Bluff. But yeah, 4 eggs in that, and we're looking forward to the potential for those eggs to be hatching very soon as well. So watch those camps this week. And then with our Chesapeake Falcons further east, brought to us by the Chesapeake Conservancy in downtown Baltimore, Maryland, Bo and Barb are still caring for 2 eye-asses in that nest. There were 4 eggs originally. 2 of the eggs did not hatch, but rapidly growing falcon chicks there. So really great to see. Then now we also are welcoming in our osprey to the Egg Watch feature here, because in Charlotte, Montana, 2 eggs in there. That first egg laid April 29, second egg on May 2nd. Our Research Institute is helping us out with this camera and allowing us to see that footage of those birds. So Charlie and Lola are doing great there so far. The Chesapeake Ospreys in Kent Island, Maryland, with Tom and Audrey, they have 2 eggs. Most recent one was laid on May 4, and thanks to the Chesapeake Conservancy there for allowing us to witness them. And then finally, the Audubon Boathouse in Hog Island in Bremen, Maine. Dory and Skipper there, they have 1 egg so far that was just laid yesterday, so May 4. Expected hatch for all of these nests looking at mid-June. And thanks to the Audubon Seabird Institute and the Hog Island Sanctuary for partnering with us for that boathouse nest. And then finally, just a few more nests to get to. Wading birds, great blue herons have hatched. So during our last program, we mentioned that the heron eggs were found on the ground beneath the rookery, and we weren't sure if hatching had started in this nest in particular, but it certainly has by now, because as of today, I could see at least 3 heron chicks poking their heads up from the nest. And cam viewers seem to have noticed signs of hatching maybe as early as April 24 and April 25. They're going to be in the nest for 7 to 8 weeks or so. So we have a lot of time to watch them. Late June, I think, is the fledge window for that species on this nest. And then also our spoonbill and alligators in St. Augustine, Florida. Tons of wading birds nesting there. Tricolored herons, great egrets, snowy egrets, spoonbills up in the trees. So lots of things there to watch. We're not looking at a specific nest, but we can see tons of wading birds. And then also, if you haven't been watching the Stony Point penguins, check it out. This is a critically endangered species. We have the opportunity to watch wild penguin chicks in this nest. So I'm really excited for this. They began, we know that they hatched right around April 26 or 27. 2 chicks in the nest. And I want to thank our cam viewers for taking their snapshots and writing comments on your snapshots, because that really helped us to locate good clips of this penguin family. And that's really the only way I was able to find glimpses of the penguin chicks when I was going through the rewind, was by looking at snapshots. And these birds, they tend to stay in their nest for 70 to 80 days. So we have, again, several weeks before we're going to see them leave the nest. I think their expected fledge time is early to mid-July. And thanks to Africam and BirdLife South Africa for partnering with us for our penguin camp. So we're following these nests and other nests in the coming weeks, including the return of puffins. So our puffin camps are going to go live very soon. Be sure to go to explore.org anytime to watch the devotion of these birds to their eggs and offspring.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mike. And speaking of things coming up, we do have some other live events coming up this week and next week. So if you are around tomorrow for the Africam show, if you feel like going on a virtual live safari. And then, as Mike mentioned, the Wild Moments show every Thursday at 7 a.m. Catch the last episode where they were talking all about the cheetah cubs. And then Mike will be co-hosting another Eagle play-by-play next week Thursday, May 15 at 2 p.m. Pacific. And also, speaking of more things coming up, the Explore.org website is getting a new landing page, and we want to hear your feedback on to make it the best it can be. So let's hear from Candace, our Director of New Media, for a sneak peek.
Hi Explore fans, this is Candace, and I am, once again, asking for your feedback. Some of you might remember a couple months ago we put out a survey asking about how you navigate the site. Over 1,400 of you responded, so thank you very much. One of the questions we asked was if you would find it helpful to have a landing page when you come to Explore. The results were largely in favor of a landing page. Currently, when you come to Explore, you land at explore.org/livecams, and you see our default livecam. Because of this, it can be hard for us to communicate what new live events are coming up, website updates, any fundraisers, new cams, etc. The way we do that right now is with the blue banner above a live cam, but this can become annoying for people over time and doesn't let us feature as many things as we want. I want to stress that a landing page is a new page. Explore.org/livecams will appear the same as it always has. Your bookmark won't change. The general tone of the feedback we received in the survey was there's room for improvement, but don't change too much. We have a design for a landing page that we would like your feedback on. At the top of the page, you will notice the search bar has been moved to the middle of the page and is much larger. In the survey, about half the respondents said they didn't use the search feature at all. This could be for a few reasons, but the placement of the search feature currently is pretty hidden. The camera categories bar will remain. If you click on any of those categories, the poster carousel will appear like it currently does when you're scrolled down on Explore. We thought about keeping all the posters visible, but that takes up quite a lot of room on a landing page. We then see a short statement about what Explore is and a quick link to the live cams. The idea of this page is that all these widgets are modular. We can move them around and feature different kinds of information. We'll have a featured live cam. This will change based on the season. We have a lot of different boxes for different kinds of information, new cameras, links to live events. If you're logged in, we'll have boxes that will display your favorite live cams and other profile information. We thought it would be a good idea to have a place where we can feature our amazing nonprofit partners. At the end of the day, Explore.org exists to help promote these wonderful organizations. If it's Fat Bear Week, we'll have some quick links to those pages. We have a panel for frequently asked questions. While you're always welcome to email us at feedback@explore.org, many of the questions we get are in our FAQ, but the current FAQ page is buried in the hamburger menu. We have links to our social posts. This is where we can feature our weekly update videos or any other fun things. If you're on a mobile device, all of these boxes become stacked and you can just scroll down to keep seeing more information. We really appreciate it if you could take a minute to fill out a short survey based on your impressions of this initial design. Thank you, everyone.
Awesome. I'm super excited for this landing page. So as Ken just mentioned, please take a moment to fill out the survey. If you're watching on Explore or YouTube, look in the chat for that link. And if you're not watching us live, look in the video description on the YouTube page for that link. That is all the time that we have for today. Again, I want to give a special thank you to all of our moderators and camera operators, and of course, my co-host, Mike Fitz. Join us again in 2 weeks for another episode of More to Explore. And until then, happy exploring.